Reconvene into open session.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Order business. Dan, we're going
No, first we gotta do the action for the closed session business.
to...
D.
D1.
Okay, so for the...
I'd make a motion to approve per diem payment for unused vacation days for 2018-19 for Jared Rosing, 2.5 days, Reed Foster, 2.5 days.
No.
I'm sorry, Jared Rosing, 5 days. I'm doing the division by two, right? Reed Foster, 5 days, and Dan Olson by 2.5 days.
Discussion. Second. Second.
Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Order business.
I have a recommendation that we move 3 items, L1, L2, and L3 under the possible action items up to prior to the administrative and board reports. We have guests at each of those agenda items that will be appearing before the board tonight, and so give them an opportunity to speak earlier in the agenda.
You want to move them to before J?
Thank you, yes. Before
Just ask if there's any objections to
Is
this.
there any objections to that?
None.
Okay. Go ahead and move to that. Okay, public appearances. Just to let everyone know, you will have 3 minutes to speak, no more. We have a lot here, so please make your time wisely. We'd love to hear from you anyway. First up, Sergeant Lindsay Schindler. Please come up to the front, have a seat. Please state your name and your address.
Staff Sergeant Lindsay Schindler. The address is going to be 5235 High Crossing Boulevard.
Okay.
Okay. Good evening, board. First and foremost, thank you for this opportunity. My name is Master Sergeant Brown. I'm actually up from Milwaukee, Wisconsin, as part of the headquarters element for the United States Marine Corps recruiting. And what we seek to discuss further with you is just the accessibility to the student population of Monona Grove High School. Being someone that, as a senior in high school, was hanging up on recruiters and telling them I'm going to college, which I did. Great semester at Morehouse College, not so great 2 years at UW-Madison. I realized that discipline was something that I needed. But that opportunity was originally presented to me because of the access of the recruiter to my high school. Though I wasn't one that initially joined out of high school and didn't come in until the age of 22, I can say that it has been a wonderful 22 plus years, and I owe a lot to the Marine Corps. Again, because of what I was able to uncover information-wise with the recruiter inside the high school. I think a common misconception is that we prey on students when the fact of the matter is it starts off as a conversation specifically of what their future plans are and what sort of tools they feel they need, whether it's confidence, leadership, money for school, which we all know that those are all benefits that the service offers. And for lack of a better phrase, it almost feels like it's a position where we are doing the student population a disservice by not laying out all opportunities. We obviously understand the military is for some, but not for everyone. And I think it's a decision better vetted with the parents of the student once they have had that opportunity to gather the additional information. I find myself right now in a situation with 3 sons, one in just completed freshman year at NIU. He's able to use my education benefits. I have another son who is a junior at Rufus King High School. And while even in my situation I would not force the military on them, I would want them to know what their full opportunities are that exist. And so I guess we respectfully just request that we kind of take a look at the accessibility, because as it currently stands, it's 3 times a year. It's a little bit different than the way some of these surrounding schools handle the situation. I think that's all I have.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
What is the accessibility you have with the surrounding schools in Dane County that you don't have in Monona Grove?
Okay, that's a very good question. For that question, I'll actually, since I am up from the headquarters in Milwaukee, I would deflect it to Staff Sergeant Schindler as this is her area of responsibility?
So right now in Monona Grove, I get 3 planned visits a year. And with those visits, I have to stay within student services back in the corner by the police liaison's office. I'm not able to go out in the lunchroom, let them know that I'm there. So not too many students know that I'm actually there those 3 times throughout this whole school year. And then other schools around Dane County, yes, some of them are 3 visits, but I also go into classrooms and correlate that with the curriculum that they're on. An example is talking about our blended retirement with financial classes, let them know that they can set up for their retirement in the military. And another example is going into history classes, talking about our history in the Marine Corps, maybe females in the military, and how we've overcome a lot of diversity. And also we go into gym classes and work out with them, talk about good nutrition, things that they can do over the winter time to stay healthy, and eating good, just kind of being in there, being involved with them. That's just a few examples that I've done in the other schools, just so the student population knows who I am, and they know that there's a lot of other opportunities that they could look into as well.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
And also, just add a note that I noticed that they are out in the cafeterias at the Sudbury School District, and students are able to have access to them. So that is kind of a disservice to have them in the student services, and no one knows that they're there. So we need to talk about that.
So I'll research it and report back to the board as well. I'm not aware that there's any board policy that covers this, but I'll follow up with Principal Cross as well and research what the practice or any policies that we might have in writing or administrative guidelines.
I want to welcome you here. I did in the hallway. I was one of them 63 years ago in the Marine Corps. Too.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I didn't look as good as they did. But welcome here, particularly as a young officer, lieutenant. I learned more from you folks with stripes on your arms than I did anything else. Because you guys have been around and you know what you're doing too. And welcome here.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, guys.
Hey,
Thank you.
Thank you for the service.
Thank you, board.
Okay, next we have Tyler Cool. Did I pronounce it right?
Oh, I like how you said it, but it's Keel.
Keel? I like Cool.
My students will call me Mr. Cool sometimes. It's super accurate these days. Yeah. So I'm Tyler Keel. I have 443 Cheryl Street in Cottage Grove. I've been teaching environmental science at Monona Grove High School now for the past 7 years, and I'm here to talk from a teacher perspective, encouraging the district to adopt a 100% renewable energy resolution. One thing that those of us who operate in educational circles have come to know quite well is that learning is a two-way street. When we get into education, we hope that we can have a lifelong impact on our students, and we soon realize that our students teach us a great deal as well. While I hope my former students have learned things about science and themselves, I know that I've learned a great deal from them. They care about a sustainable future and have taught me how important that is to them. One of the themes of my curriculum comes from a quote that drives a lot of the different things in my life. Edmund Burke said, "No man made a greater mistake than he who did nothing because he could only do a little." I tell students that their own individual actions are vital even while they may seem small. And in essence, I want my students to dream big, but not ignore the seemingly small daily opportunities they have to make a difference. In all honesty though, I don't think adopting this resolution should even be seen as dreaming big. This is an action that has been taken by large cities and even entire countries. It's time for us to play our small part. I get very similar feedback from every group of students at the end of each year that environmental science should be a required course, which would be great. I agree in a sense. The significance of these problems necessitates the education of all who walk through the doors of Monona Grove School District buildings. However, I don't think you accomplish that by making environmental science a required course. I think you accomplish that by becoming a sustainable district. Students should be interacting with concepts that encourage a sustainable future throughout their educational career. We need to teach students the history of how we got to where we are, the energy solutions, economic models and strategies, the psychology of changing behavior, and that there are social justice and career opportunities for every student in a society that must increasingly embrace sustainability. I think ultimately this is a curricular outcome of a district who takes steps to be sustainable itself. Now the cool thing about our district is this is happening organically in a lot of ways. Students are learning some of these things and taking actions themselves. It's time for us to once again learn from them and follow their lead. As a part of a project I have in my class where students get some space and time to try to make an impact, they've done some pretty awesome things for our school and community. They've raised funds to build 2 fresh water wells for schools in Uganda, reusable water bottle refilling stations at the high school. They've saved countless rolls of paper towels by doing the legwork to get electric hand dryers installed, which also saved the school thousands of dollars. They've created educational programming for elementary students to teach about freshwater usage and plastic pollution. They've been leading the way on these things, and as adults in the district, that's mission is to enhance achievement for all students by cultivating a desire for learning and instilling a social responsibility. We must not squander this opportunity. It's beyond the time for our own social responsibility to kick in. The old adage from Theodore Roosevelt, which rings true in so many ways inside education, echoes here as well. Students don't care how much we know until we show them how much we care. They know we know that climate change is a serious issue. But we as adults in this district need to show them that we care by adopting a 100% renewable energy resolution. Thank you.
Thank you, Tyler. Next up, Pete Carnes.
Good evening. I was recently made aware that MG&E only purchases X amount of green energy per entity. Can we have 2 entities? One, the new school owned 100% by the school district, and secondly, a field house or gym where there's a joint ownership. Can it be, if I'm guessing it won't be 50-50, but can it be $1 from Cottage Grove? Would that double the amount of energy we can purchase or we can supply to MG&E? Okay, then the other thing that I wanted to talk about was I'm all about preserving future options. I don't want to straitjacket, eliminate future options for future generations. Can we, the hallway between, on the south end of the diagram, can we lengthen the hallway between the like administration / library on one side and music / art on the other side? Can we just have a hallway so that we don't have them right up against the gym? So that down the road, you could build, like, say, 2 classrooms on each side of the hallway. That's 4 times 2 up. It gives just option. Then also, on the gyms, should we have, since we're going to have 3 grades, should we have 3 gyms, each with accordion walls? Could also, like at Winnequa, unless I'm mistaken, if you want to go to the west gym, you have to go through the east gym. Could we have an internal hallway? Up on the second floor, the upper hallway, could that be spectator viewing behind the baskets? Also, could you have it landscaped so that down the road you could have future locker rooms? I do cardio in this neighborhood. Sometimes I see, I saw a bunch of cars here one night. I went over and it was wrestling night at what I call Nichols, what you call the administration building. Another night, it was basketball at Immaculate Heart. I'm guessing that Cottage Grove probably has a lack of gymnasiums. Would it be beneficial to have 3 gyms for the future for Cottage Grove when Cottage Grove grows from 7,000 to 17,000? Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Lisa Gunlack.
Just registering in favor.
What?
So, she just says, she's checked off, just to register.
Oh.
Just read out,
Uh,
registering in favor of.
She's just in favor of the sustainable solutions and renewable energy. Oh, that was fast. This is Heather Allen. Okay.
Hi, my name is Heather Allen. I am Program Director for Renew Wisconsin, and I'm here on behalf of that organization today. I'm not a resident of the city of Monona. I'm a resident of the city of Madison. Our organization is a statewide organization, though, and we work with local governments and businesses, nonprofits, and other organizations that are trying to go renewable to help them go renewable. So the reason I'm here today is to thank you for looking closely at this issue of renewable energy, and to just sort of encourage you that it is feasible to do all sorts of different renewable energy projects on your building, all sorts of energy efficiency projects, to do it economically and to save money for the district over time. Renew Wisconsin and other entities in the state will stand ready to help you with any technical assistance you need or support along the way as you make a number of decisions to go down the renewable energy and energy efficiency pathways. So we just wanted to encourage you. There are school districts who are, Madison Metro has passed this resolution, and there are school districts around the country that are doing this. The Net Zero School in Oregon is a very exciting example of what can be done. But I understand, having worked for the city of Madison for a number of years, that really, when you're making decisions, those are budget-based decisions. And I would encourage you to rejoice in the news that when you make these sustainability investments, you're going to reduce operating costs over time, which is actually the point that you are squeezed the tightest. So we stand ready to help. We thank you for your interest. We are excited that the students and the staff are so interested as well. And we look forward to working with you. And I'm also available for questions.
Thank you. I have, this is Isla Esser, and she would not like to speak, but would like to register her position on solar on schools. Is that correct? Okay, we will look into that. Also, I have Derek Peterson. Derek, he would not like to speak as well, but is in favor of solar in schools as well. Miles Peterson. He would not like to speak as well, but he is in favor of renewable energy on schools as well. Next speaker is Charles Hall.
That works.
Howard? Okay.
All right, so I have to admit that I'm a little bit of an imposter, so I'm not affiliated with Monona, but I've lived in Fitchburg and now live in Middleton and went to school in Madison, so I've bounced around a little bit. I just wanted to talk really quick on to encourage the school board to look at opportunities for renewable energy and energy efficiency. So I graduated from Madison West High School in 2018. Over there during my senior year, I helped raise $100,000 to install a solar project at our school. The district chipped in 25 of that 100, so they're getting a payback period of 1 year. So it's been a great investment for them. And then just this past year, I was helping organize a campaign that got Madison School District to become the largest school district in the country to establish 100% renewable energy resolution. So all that being said, I think that Monona Grove has a wonderful opportunity here at the turn of this next century or next decade to really be a leader in renewable energy and energy efficiency. And I think that's true for two key reasons. The first is sort of just continuing the momentum that youth across Dane County have built. We saw the climate march a few months ago. We also have seen youth. We collected actually 2,500 signatures from students, staff, families, taxpayers, demonstrating support for that 100% renewable energy resolution in Madison. So I'm sure there's a lot of support in this community as well. And I really think Monona has a special opportunity to be a true leader in this movement and join the Madison School District. And I think the second key sort of argument that I wanted to mention was the educational opportunities. So the fastest growing job right now is solar technician. The second fastest is wind energy installer. So there's really no better way to connect students to what the job market values right now than through these educational opportunities in renewable energy. And so I think that's a really strong reason. I think schools traditionally have not seen themselves as institutions of sustainability, but I think we sort of need to unpack that narrative because not only are these great career opportunities, but also youth will be most affected by climate change. So it makes most sense that ground zero is sort of taken at these schools. I didn't even mention anything about the environment or really anything about finances, which are two other really strong reasons to support discussions on renewable energy and energy efficiency. So I really encourage Monona Grove to consider this, and just know that the community has your support. Thank you very much.
How can we get you to be a permanent advocate here? Not just pass through.
Might buy a house here, I don't know, 10 years.
Okay, Vanessa Brown would not like to speak. Vanessa? but she is in favor of sustainable solutions for the district. Beth Asser would not like to speak, but is in favor for the district pursuing renewable energy in the new construction and 100% renewable energy district-wide. Ann Ahern would not like to speak. Okay, but is in favor of sustainable solutions for the district facilities, especially for the new construction. All right, thank you, Ann. Teresa Rademacher, did I get that right? Would not like to speak.
I would.
Oh, you want to?
Check the wrong box.
You checked the wrong box, but that's okay. You want to speak? Come on over.
All right.
So just state your name and the address.
Thank you.
Okay.
So I'm Teresa Rademacher. I live just down the road here at McKenna Road. I have a daughter who's a freshman at Monona Grove High School, and she just today met Mr. Cool, which was great. I'm a volunteer with the Monona Sustainability Committee, and I do a lot of, off-the-clock volunteer work in sustainability, but it's not my day job. By trade, I work in IT, I'm a project manager, and you all have day jobs also, and tonight you're seeing this tremendous community support for something that you might feel nervous about because it's not your day job and you're not experts at it. And you don't know about net metering, and you don't know about the legalities of solar and third-party financing and all these crazy things that make your head want to explode, right? So I've learned just through volunteering things that make my head want to explode too. It's just it's hard to get your head around it sometimes, but there's clear community support. There's clear benefits. There's clear reasons why schools are the perfect leaders for something like this. They're the first educators of our children. They're the role models. They're oftentimes the center of communities. And you're very, very high energy users, right? Next to payroll, it is one of your biggest, if not the second biggest expense. There's a lot of support, there's a lot of reasons to do this, and there's a lot of opportunities, and perhaps more opportunities exist than one or two or three people can really know about. Heather from Renew Wisconsin just talked about the funding and the opportunity and the assistance that her organization provides. Focus on Energy provides money for design, for implementation. They even have money for electric buses if you want to go down that route. Even the state treasurer's office could have a hand in this. Our lieutenant governor has made sustainability and equity the calling card of his campaign and even his tenure in I was going to say the White House, wrong building, in the state capitol. There's some models, there's cooperative models where imagine all the families in the district buy a solar panel on an elementary school where their beloved child goes to school. They get a 4 to 6% return, reliable return, knowing they can also do good. The land next to the school, you could even lease it to a solar developer. There's just so many things. Did you even know, and I just learned this yesterday from Heather at Renew, that because of the geothermal in our building, it allows you to do more solar because the pumps act as a way to store the energy you create, which influences your financial model. So my point is, there is so much out there, and it's impossible for us to get our brains, it's difficult for us to get our brains around it. What we really need is someone that can analyze our current situation, our energy demand, all these things, compare what's out there, understand the opportunities we have for financing. Maybe, actually, what I am proposing is that this body seriously considers assembling some sort of a task force or an ad hoc committee. You could comprise it from community members, school district members, experts in the field, get people together similarly to how you've formed committees in the past. You keep the school district members up to date on your progress, which brings them into the plan, makes them feel a part of it, gets them behind it, builds community support, and it builds a template for other school districts, and this is the biggest part of it all. You build a template so that other people who are struggling just like you're struggling now, they want to do the right thing, the community's behind it, but they're not sure exactly what the best way to do the right thing might be. We build a template for them, and we ripple this out to all schools, right? Maybe not all, but a lot of them, right? So I would hope that this body would consider assembling some sort of a task force to do that. Thank you so much.
Hey, I have a
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Is the state treasurer still giving out money for good applications?
I am not sure, but I shot an email to go have coffee with her staff person today, so we're going to find out.
Yeah.
I think we can find
Well,
out
they talked to
really
my
easily.
Rotary Club, and they looked like they were looking for people to
Yeah.
give away money for sustainability.
Yep.
That's their purpose.
Yep.
I think it's the state treasurer was a part of the grant to the city of Monona.
I'm not sure of the exact
Well,
connection.
they talked to,
But I
they
know
mentioned they were involved in that.
Yeah. Yeah, there's definitely a link between those
Okay.
offices, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Teresa.
You're welcome.
Next is Katherine Roberts.
Hello,
Hi.
I'm Katherine Roberts. I'm Teresa's daughter.
Okay.
I live on McKenna Road as well. I'm an incoming freshman at Monona Grove High School. So I believe that the planet and sustainability is the most important problem of my generation that we need to solve, and I think that adopting a 100% renewable energy resolution or putting solar on schools would be a good way to help solve that problem. And you would also create an example for other schools in the area, the communities, and the children within our own schools. When they would go to school every day, they would be learning about renewable energy, sustainability, and hopefully would take that into their future careers and lifestyles. Me as a student, I do everything I can to help the planet and be sustainable, from picking up trash on the street to being vegetarian. And with the destruction of our planet comes extreme weather conditions like the flooding we saw last year in Monona. And I helped alongside Miss Manning to sandbag the communities, and that was my first time sandbagging, but with the extreme weather that will continue to happen, it's probably not my last. And in 20 years, when I speak to future generations, younger kids, I want to be able to say that I did everything I could to give them clean air, clean water, and not that I watched the planet be destroyed while idly standing by. So that's why it's a personal issue for me, and that's why I'm asking you guys to consider adopting a 100% renewable energy resolution or solar on schools.
Thank you, Catherine. I'm gonna keep an eye on her. I don't really listen to a lot of adults, but I like the kids. I like it. Okay.
It's the best talk so far.
I have Sarah Moran, is this Ronan Moran, and Nora Moran.
Yep.
They would not like to speak. Hi, guys.
Hi. I spoke about the health effects the other week to you guys, and we're just here again to offer our support.
Okay, so they are in favor of the renewable energy and sustainable, is this the commitments? So thank you all to all the speakers today. Yeah. All right, moving right along to consent agenda.
Thanks everybody there
Thanks,
who
yeah.
came to talk tonight. All right.
So we're looking at the
Gotta
consent
get the board
agenda.
docs up. I'd move the approval of the consent agenda as presented.
I have a question about number 4, approval of vouchers payable.
Wanted to just, the thing to do is pull it off the agenda, the
Okay.
consent agenda.
So I'd like to make a motion to...
No, just ask to be pulled
Oh,
off.
I'd like to ask to take number 4, approval of vouchers payable off of the consent agenda, possibly add it back.
I'd like to make a motion for approval of items 1 through 4 and 6 of the consent agenda as presented.
No, I said item 4.
1 through 3 and 5 through 6. Sorry, 5 and 6. As presented.
Okay.
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. We'll move 4.
I'd like to make a motion for approval of number 4 of vouchers payable. Now we can have discussion.
Okay.
So as soon as somebody seconds it.
I'll second it.
Okay.
So I just had a couple of questions, Dan. I don't know if you can answer them. The main question with the vouchers payable, I was just curious. There was an auditorium curtain on there for $42,678. Just seemed like a lot of money for a curtain. I'm sure there's more to it than that.
I want to defer to Jared Rosen, who I know was personally involved with that.
Okay.
So it's the complete redo of our auditorium, drapes,
Okay.
the top, all the cords. If you had been to any of our performance lately, you've seen some of the holes that were in them. They were in really bad shape. They were over 25 years old.
So we're not talking about just a curtain.
Not a curtain that goes around doing it. It's the complete auditorium stage area.
Okay.
Back,
Something
drop.
Something that you can't pick up at Walmart.
Correct.
Just wanted to check.
No,
That's a big number
It is.
for.
I think you can get it at Walmart.
Yeah. Okay. All right. That's.
I think this is something we've been talking about for a while.
Yep.
Okay. I'm okay with that.
Okay.
Did we get $42,000 worth?
We did.
Okay, so.
And more.
Someone to make
Vote on it.
we can make the, okay,
Yep.
so
So-
all in favor of
Just approving the
approving the voucher payable? Say
Number
aye.
4.
Aye.
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 All opposed? Motion carries. Recognitions.
Okay. During the 2018-19 school year, NG21 high school students created radio pieces for Wisconsin Public Radio's Wisconsin Life. The final stories were featured on the radio and online through the Classroom Frequency Student Voices from Wisconsin project, and board members have a link to the stories on your board docs. So again, unbelievable effort of our students as well as our MG21 teachers who helped coordinate that project. Congratulations to the class of 2019, both at MG21 and Monona Grove High School. In addition, our kindergartners, the class of 2031, offered some great advice to our graduating seniors, and so there's a link for our board members to hear that very inspiring video of our class of 2031. Tierney Lofgren, who from the class of 2019, recently competed in the Women's Youth 4+ Regatta National Championships in Sarasota, Florida. We're proud of her achievements and wish her the best as she continues. And again, there are some links to some of Tierney's competitions. The Monona Grove High School cast and crew of Music Man won Outstanding Musical Award at the JARE Awards this week. A special shout out also goes to the teachers and advisors that worked so hard on this, Ms. Naherniak, Mr. Davik, and Mr. Stanek. The JARE Awards are one of Wisconsin high school musical award programs that encourages, recognizes, and honors excellence in high school music theater. And again, there are some photos and more information linked for our board members. And lastly, it was a busy end to the school year. We all remember a teacher, coach, or trusted adult who made a difference in our own lives. And the flurry that end of the school year often brings, we know that each school staff member is that person for students of Monona Grove School District. Our teachers and staff make a difference and enrich the lives of young people in this community every day. Before our teachers and staff said their farewells, there were field trips, science experiments, prairie plantings, technology projects, and field days. And the board members have links to additional information and photos about all of those small group of unbelievable projects that our staff involved with our students. So again, congratulations, and we're very appreciative of the staff, and we're wrapped up another successful school year.
Thank you, Dan. Next item is correspondence and announcements.
We have none? Oh, I'm sorry, my mistake. We do have one announcement. And what we included during the joint finance community hearings, our board member and legislative liaison Susan Fox did give testimony at one of the hearings in Janesville, and so there is a link to her testimony that was given at that. So we appreciate Susan's efforts.
I'd also like to acknowledge, in addition to the people who spoke tonight, that we got letters from Jennifer Stofflet, Melissa Ratcliffe, Heidi Matthew-Murphy, and Molly Groupie expressing support for renewable energy resolution and renewable energy usage in our schools.
Okay. All right, we are going to go ahead and go to the possible action items 1, 2, and 3. So the first item we're going to go to is the employee health care benefits plan.
Okay, great. So I'd like to introduce the board, or most of the board have met him before, Al Yeager, from Associated, helped facilitate our process to bring forth the recommendation tonight. He'll speak a little bit to that. Also like to recognize a number of our staff members who are part of the committee that also were able to join us here this evening. So I really appreciate them taking the time out. I'd like to introduce those staff members if you don't mind. We have with us Scott Amira. We've got Kevin Mickelbank. We've got Kate Menenga. And Denise Favor. Thank you. Did I miss anyone? Okay, so they'll also be available to answer any questions that board members might have about the process. So with that, I'd like to bring Al up to the table, and then Jared can talk a little bit about the task that we had with regard to budget challenges and the work. We'll talk about the work that the committee did to bring forth the recommendation this evening.
Yep. So attached to board docs, I did give you a document that's called Health Insurance Financial Overview. And just as a reminder, so 3 years ago, the district, or 3.5 years ago, the district set through the same journey. At that time, we were part of the state health insurance plan, and we were looking at being able to take control of our health insurance destination instead of waiting for the state of Wisconsin to tell us that these are the deductibles or no deductibles. These are the percentages that you must charge your employees. Specifically, when Act 10 was passed, there was state law that was put in that employees must contribute 12.6% of their health insurance. That law was actually written for any health care benefit that was part of the state health insurance plan. There were numerous districts across the state of Wisconsin that did take advantage of that, but by law we were required. And we felt that when we look at compensation, we need to look at total compensation, and that includes not only what we're compensating our staff, but then looking at the benefits. So we worked with AL and we facilitated a dual choice and moved to Dean and at that time Physicians Plus, and they were with us for the last 3 years. Our contract had come up for renewal, and so we went out. Al walked us through that process that he'll talk about. We got some results back that resulted in somewhat about 5% increase. But the reason that we really needed to dig into making some potential changes around our health insurance is if you look at the health insurance financial overview, and for 2018, 2019, the district had budgeted just over $6 million for the district's portion of health insurance, which was actually an increase of $682,000 over the 17-18 school year, which actually was just shy of a 13% increase to our budget. And you can see that we have currently 482 positions at the snapshots that were out in the district that we employ. And of those 482, 95% of all of our positions are eligible for health insurance. And we actually have a participation rate of 87%, which I think is great that we have that large participation. However, what we were seeing is individuals coming over to our health insurance because other municipalities or other companies were making major changes to their health insurance. So even though our health insurance was capped at a 7% increase on rate, we actually experienced just shy of that 13% due to the fact of large enrollment. And so what we were seeing is that increase was really taking a significant chunk out of our budget. And so when we walked through with the committee and trying to predict what was going to happen with the state budget, we were predicting that we were going to receive about $900,000 in new revenues from the states. And when we applied that 5% increase in the renewal along with our overages, health insurance increases were going to take up about $620,000 of that $900,000 of new funds. Obviously, as the district continues to work through the concept of increasing our salary structures, it was really taking away where we had that. So the committee that was named here, and Al walked us through that, So as an outcome of the recommendation, the district actually is seeing a 0% increase in our health insurance. On the budgeting side of things, there's actually a decrease to the budget of approximately $91,000 that we'll be able to experience. So it wasn't necessarily an easy task. No one wants to pay more for their health insurance, but so when we talk about the financial picture, that was really the task that was set forth and why we needed to make that change so we can be able to move forward with the limited resources that we're receiving from the states.
Tell me about the savings. Why we're saving $91,000? What is that?
So
our premiums are lower?
So our premiums will be lower. There's actually approximately was at a 1.26% reduction in premiums. Mm-hmm. So when we entered into the budgeting process, we were projecting a 5% increase based on the. So when I talk about a $91,000 savings, that will be a $91,000 savings of what we had budgeted for this year. So that's where we're equaling a 0% increase. So ultimately, we would have potentially saw a $300,000 increase due to the new insurance rates coming in, plus the overages, which we had developed a structural deficit of approximately, $320,000 to get us to that 620. Okay. And so by making these changes that we're going to talk about in the recommendation from the committee, we were able to lower our premiums for a total cost for the district to come in just shy of that $100,000.
Do you expect a change in either the eligibility or the participation?
We do have the recommendation of the eligibility change, but what we are recommending is that it's not going to, everybody that is currently in the district would be grandfathered in at the current rate, and there would be any new hires, and that would be moving to a 30-hour threshold, which is common throughout the state, specifically Dane County. We're one of the only schools that don't have that. And obviously that might change, but as you will I'll talk to, by moving to a $100 and $200 deductible and a $100 ER, we don't foresee there's going to be a large number of individuals leaving, because when we look at the individuals that are coming over to our district, they're coming over to our district from municipalities or school districts that are implementing $3,000 and $6,000 deductibles.
Our deductible was zero.
Was zero before.
I have another question. I don't know if this is Gallagher to answer.
I would suggest that Al talk a little bit about the specifics of the plan, and that might answer some of the questions. So.
Sure. So first and foremost, I would say the committee, there's a significant communication, what's the term I'm looking for, process that was really beneficial. Doing this the second time as far as the process certainly helped, because I think there was a lot of consistency in the members that are on the committee, so the level of understanding was significantly higher. From a purpose standpoint, understanding what were the objectives. Jared sharing what he shared already in terms of the overall budget. There was a complete understanding of, along with board representation in the committee, and understanding what are some things we're driving to. As far as some of the additional communication, constant communication, what they felt were strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats, and then other trends taking place. Getting through the process, when we created, I would say, the RFI proposal request, we did look at many, many different approaches, many options. From a plan design standpoint, the key items included a high deductible plan design, as well as do we consolidate with one provider system. One of the key takeaways from a culture was it was really important to maintain the provider access that is currently maintained. So the other thing that was early on recognized, while we were looking at the range of 5% increase, we were expecting something that would have been over double digits, because when we look at our claims versus our premiums, it very well could have been well into the double digit standpoint. So by us doing the full-fledged bid process and doing it with many other districts, we were able to get that number in the 4 to 5% range, but still from Jared's summary and transparency, it was recognized, okay, that's still several $100,000 increase. Going to ultimately the recommendations that came to the table, maintaining a dual offering was first and foremost part of the recommendation of keeping both Dean and Quartz in the picture. With an understanding, we were able to get both Dean and Quartz not only to become more aggressive, but have a second and a third year rate cap that would be 5.9% worst case scenario in year 2. And that's after the decrease that we would experience in this year with the other plan changes. And year 3 is 7.9% worst case scenario. The other piece would be introducing the $100 single deductible, $200 family deductible, along with the $100 emergency room copay. Those are all new, I'd say, cost shift or cost responsibilities from the staff standpoint. Meanwhile, the understanding was the staff contribution, they're hoping to mitigate any additional staff contribution out of the paycheck from the current 5% contribution. The eligibility piece of the equation, there was discussion around it. Jared summarized it in large part where if recognizing we did a lot of peer comparisons. Not only what was being spent on health insurance, what the plan designs, what the eligibility, and that's in large part of the recommendation of saying, okay, moving forward with 30 hours makes sense as long as we're not taking something away from the existing members' eligibility. So that addresses the plan design recommendation, that addresses the contribution, the eligibility, and the piece that's not yet been addressed that's a big piece of the engagement is wellness. The biggest win-win of the opportunities that's becoming significant in the Dane County area is just additional engagement with the provider systems from a wellness standpoint and the staff members and promoting it through the district. That can take a lot of forms, which takes a lot more time than what we want to spend right now. But the whole idea with that is it's not a cost shift, it's an actual behavior incentives. And so how do we want to engage in that? And that's to be determined. So from a timeline, just touching base on that, obviously we're in June right now, and this is part of the recommendation. Any questions, please?
I have a question about so with the deductible of $100, say for the single, is that every doctor's appointment or every appointment that somebody would have?
Not on preventative. Part of ACA and part of the plan design would mean anything that's preventative in nature would be covered at 100%.
Okay.
So we're trying to, part of that wellness piece, we're trying to incentivize the preventative part of the equation.
But if someone did have some sort of health condition where they had to see a doctor 5 or 6 times a month, that would be $500 or $600 a month that they're paying the deductible.
So the $100 per individual in a given year maxes out at $100. So it's it's an annual deductible as opposed to a per occurrence.
Okay.
I think that's a good point, Eric, because that was some of the conversation that happened at the committee, is that you could look at deductibles or you could add copays. And the concern is the copays, I mean, obviously we are making the recommendation for the ERs, but we already had a copay there. Mm-hmm. But if you had a copay at every office visit, that was every time you went to the doctor, you were paying for something. Mm-hmm. So at least capping out.
Like copays. Just okay.
It was perceived as understandable, budgetable, if that's a word.
Yeah.
Okay. Dean?
I'd have to, I think most of the board knows, but the public here, is that the comparative data that we have with our competitive districts to attract and retain teachers from a personnel standpoint, we have a very good health position, so to speak, but we're paying a little higher for it, right? Is that a good conclusion? Comparatively to other districts?
Yeah, so our premiums are at the higher rates, the contribution that the district's paying for, yes, which then results in, you can look at salaries being lower because the benefit side is higher. Yeah. So our goal is to...
But these are plans that have been cooperatively developed and planned and accepted?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
I'd like to move approval of the Healthcare Benefits Committee recommendation as presented.
Second.
favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you. Second is the McKinstry Commissioning Management Services.
Yeah, I'll give a brief introduction, then I'm going to turn it over to Jared. Also with us tonight, Nick Labush from McKinstry. So as we started this project with the design of the new school, and we've talked a lot about what consultants we might need, and one of the main pieces, and as you has been a topic of discussion, not only with sustainability, but just in general, any decisions, energy related. We've had a long-standing relationship with McKinstry in a number of projects in the past, and so as Jared and I sat in, many meetings and looked at the decision-making that needed to occur about the types of energy, sources, not only for the new school, but in renovations and in the future, we ultimately came to the conclusion that we need some assistance to help make good decisions. And so we did engage in discussions with McKinstry about what sorts of services they can provide for us to help us with that decision making. And that's what leads us here tonight. So I'm going to let Jared talk a little bit more, and then Nick can help us with that a little bit as well.
So attached to board docs is the proposal that we received from McKinstry. I do want to state that this fee would be paid as of right now out of the referendum funds moving forward. The main part of it is as Dan had stated, is that when we were talking about owners reps and how do we bring in experts, we identified McKinstry as one of those areas to assist us with, because they are able to really understand by working on 3 different phases with the district relating to our previous sustainability movements, our energy efficiency processes, what's currently in our buildings for HVAC, and then being able to sit down. And so we asked them to put together a proposal that would allow them to serve as our commissioning group, along with being able to help us model our energy usage and help us make the decisions when it comes time to selecting the correct HVAC side of things. And so as you can see in the proposal, they will be part of this alongside the district as a partner from day since we brought them on. They've already been meeting with us, even though the board hasn't necessarily approved the proposal. As we work through the geothermal, they will be commissioning the new building to ensure that what is put in is actually working correctly, and they will follow up on warranties and train our staff. But that's a quick, brief overview. So what I'm classifying them as is our experts, the district's partners, that will help us ensure that what we do around HVAC, which has a lot of that sustainability side of things, is being incorporated into the new school specifically. There will be proposals coming forth to look at our other schools in the district on retro commissioning, along with sustainability conversations. But I'll turn it over to Nick if he wants to go into more detail about the proposal and specifically what your role is.
Yeah, I appreciate the consideration. It's good to be back in front of the board. I think, as we were brought onto the team, or considered to be brought on the team in the meetings we've had to date, the district's on a really good path with the team that they have. I mean, administratively, you've got a good, group put together, and then also EUA and Finring and New Shadow from a consultant standpoint. So we've, sometimes the design professionals and the construction managers look at commissioning like, hey, that's part of what we're here to do. Why would you want to have a third-party person come in to commission? But the Midwest has been a little slow to adopt that, but the coast, it's been a huge initiative in construction. So we're starting to catch up now. And our office here locally in Madison has a couple $1 million worth of services in this suite now that we're doing. So you can rest assured that you've got a nice team, and they've been able to take some opinions from us that may or may not have been, different than what they put out initially. So I think from that standpoint, as Jared alluded to, it is really an additive support to the district to make sure that the district's requirements for the buildings and the energy modeling and the ongoing operational costs are predictive. Obviously, I happened to be at the session that Susan spoke at. She did a really good job carrying the message around, operating costs and the need for districts to have to go to that, and fortunately your district was in support of that. So I think from that standpoint, that budget predictability as you add some square footage is important. The primary focus of this will be through design into construction, and as Jared said, with building turnover, just to make sure that the systems are operating through functional testing, the way that they were designed and the way that they were able to be modeled. We were just in a discussion around the different heat pump systems under consideration, and one of our energy engineers was able to provide a little bit of input into the team on that. And then I think the biggest piece is just to make sure that all of those systems come together and issues are resolved through construction. Because again, our job isn't really as a commissioner to write speeding tickets on what's not being done, but rather get to those issues early through submittal review, engineering review, and the such. And then I think coming out of it as well, looking at some ways to increase the sustainability. It's great to hear all the excitement around that within the district. Unfortunately, we took a good run at getting the revenue energy exemption back into the budget, but we're unsuccessful because of some folks that weren't in favor of that. So unfortunately, that's not going to be an option going forward. That would have accelerated some of that work across the state. So, but I think from that standpoint, you're well suited to be successful on that front into the future. So that's really the essence of the proposal under consideration. So I'll open it up for any questions you might have.
I'll ask one question. I don't have any background in construction or know really what a commissioner would do. So my main question is, can you give me an example of something like that would be a benefit of having a commissioner that if we didn't have it, we'd benefit from in this process that we're going through?
Yeah, great question, Eric. I think what we find a lot is a system like a mechanical, the heat pump system that you're putting in is fairly sophisticated from a control standpoint. So as Jeff, the facilities department, takes that system over, there's some training and some background around that. And even to some of the installers, the control company may not, the person doing that may not have had that experience. So just closing those gaps around that. Another example is just where systems may get started up and they're run improperly. So it might be redundantly heating and cooling air in a building that can lead to excessive energy costs. So that would be something we would catch right away, to see based on that functional test that we do. So,
yeah, if I could comment, particularly for the new board members. We've been working with McKinstry since, when did we start? 2010, do you remember?
Yeah.
And we were your first customer in Wisconsin,
right.
Correct? And we actually sent out an RFP, and McKinstry responded to it. Proposals responded to it with a couple other other organizations, with the idea of taking a look at our systems and really the ultimate goal is to reduce our spending and operational budget so that we have more money to put on salaries, so to reduce that on energy. And in fact, when I looked at the numbers in 2008, initially we were the highest spending per student on energy of any district in the state. Okay, and now we're not. But we've had this relationship that's gone on with McKinstry for quite some time now. We have spent millions of dollars on identified and spent millions of dollars essentially working on issues, solving problems that help to reduce our energy costs. And we have a good working relationship, and I'm glad to see you back on these particular projects.
Thank you, Peter.
Because for me, the goal is, one of the important goals is to reduce our operating expenditures on electricity. And if you're wondering some of the things that the commissioners have done in the past, I'm just thinking of some of the big things, like they identified that the hood in the kitchen in the high school was venting a huge amount of heat during the day, and we upgraded and changed that. Visible project is the cover that goes on the high school pool. McKinstry identified that, and it's a little complicated. It's the evaporation. In order to keep the humidity down, we have to change a lot of air with the pool in there. By putting a cover on the pool, you don't get the evaporation. When it's not in use, you don't get the evaporation. You don't have to do so many air changes, which reduces your costs. That was the item actually with the shortest payback.
Yeah, that's right.
At the time.
Got a good memory.
Yeah, so those are some of the things that we have done working with McKinstry, and I think we've had a good and mutually beneficial relationship.
Well, all that energy, no pun intended, around solar, as you look at the cost of solar installation, I mean, a lot of that and some of the incentives that are ebbing and flowing, we're seeing a huge boom in that. We were just at Wisconsin Dells last night talking about their next phase of solar for their district. So, that momentum is really moving in the renewable side. So it's exciting. So
I think again, one of the goals of that is we can pay for this. If we can find ways to pay for this, it reduces our operational expenditures over the long term, and that's what we really need to do.
I thought it was ironic that we were so excited about solar today when it looked like the world was coming to the end.
I wasn't quite with Peter when you came on board there, but
yeah, sure.
But I know the work you've done. We've heard a lot about it. Well, where would you say we are if our goal would be to maximize our sustainability? Take the new planned school. What can we attain there, and where do we have to go for? Maybe you could even specify some of the other schools in the district, but I think you know enough about where they are and what you've done with them.
Yeah, well,
so if we want to meet the goal
yeah.
that we want and the community would like, Meti and the community like to see, where are we? Where do we have to go, and how long will it take? And
yeah, well, certainly the new design is going to be, cutting edge relative to an energy density around that. So I think Jared had mentioned through the process, some of the work that Peter talked about in the 5 phases we did was somewhat infrastructure renewal. There was some energy components, but there were also some equipment that were at the end of their useful life. So I would say the time is really ripe to go back to those schools now and look at it, because if you look at lighting technology, the renewable, so I would say new construction, you're going to be highly efficient, best in class, and then I think the other schools would just need a refresh to get to that point, and then sprinkle on the renewables. So
do we have the money in our judgment, the money in the current referendum to do that refreshment to all the other schools as well?
Probably not, but I think you have enough retrofit dollars in there that you can have a nice impact on some of that work. And I think when you look at the self-funding aspects of the renewable, that'll get you another step further. So more to come on that, but I think the stage is set, Dean, for that. So.
Any more discussion?
I'd like to move approval of the McKinstry Commissioning Management Services proposal as presented.
Second.
Move in second. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Look forward to working with you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, third one is the iReady Math and Reading Diagnostic and Instruction Site Licenses.
Okay. So we have a number of team members here this evening that are available to answer questions, or actually perhaps have a little bit of comment as well. So we had a presentation to the Teaching Learning Equity Committee last week, and we chose to present there because it certainly is tied to those 3 items. And the district, as you can read from their executive summary, has been using MAP, Measure of Action Progress, as one of our main progress our assessment tools for student achievement for many, many years, and we really haven't taken a deep dive look at perhaps other tools that are out there. And so again, I won't repeat what's written there, but we brought this to the board. It's a little bit unclear through our purchasing policy about whether this requires board approval or not. It's not a contract, it's a site license. nonetheless, this is significant enough change that the board should certainly be aware, and we'd ask, for your support with this, recommendation as well. So there's a lot of information there, the presentation that was given, and so with that, again, some of you were at the committee meeting, so you probably don't have, many questions. So I guess I'll turn it over to the board. We've got plenty of individuals here tonight, can talk as much detail as you'd like. But I don't, instead of having them present, let's see what kind of questions the board might have or things that you'd like to talk about with that.
Well, I was at the, Teacher Learner and Equity Committee when they talked about iReady and MAPS assessment, and this is actually something I do have some experience with, unlike the construction. And I guess I would just like to say to the board that there really is no perfect assessment that we have, especially for a very, a diverse, increasing diverse student population. But I think that in my personal experience in the review that I've done with iReady compared to MAPS, I think that it's a thorough, good assessment, and it would be good for the Monona Grove School District. I do have a question though. I don't know if we talked about if there's a commitment with how long we're committed. Is it just a one-time purchase? Annually. So it'd be annually. Yeah. And we're not locked into a specific anytime after 1 year, correct?
Right. It's just an annual site license with many other,
So if something would come up where we do find a problem with it, we can change it again next year.
Absolutely.
And the other question I had, and I brought this up at the Teaching, Learning, and Equity Committee, but I want to bring it up again in front of the board, is the cost of the assessment compared to the MAP assessment cost.
Right. So the actual assessment, the diagnostic assessment, is actually less than MAP, but along with this, there are the tools for the, use the right word, for the, what's the word I'm looking for?
Instructional component.
Thank you, the instructional component. So with that additional piece that MAP doesn't offer, the cost is larger. So the overall cost is just over $70,000 for the license, where with the MAP, it was about $25,000 a year. But the other key piece is, though, there are a number of other supplemental pieces that we had used throughout the district, and to specific in building budget and so on, that will go away, that we'll no longer need to use. Some of those were free, some of those were paid, site licenses as well. So this will be able to use universally in all of our schools.
How do you, this new system, will that enhance our ability to deal with the equity end of things rather than simply the performance end of things? Will it be a better identifier, a diagnostic tool, or not? What did you learn?
I think I could answer that, but I would rather have Lisa answer that if you could.
Sure.
Is that okay?
Yeah. Do you want? Can I just bellow from here?
Yeah. That's fine.
Yeah, you can, but if your answer's gonna be extended, it might be better if you come up here so that we get it on tape.
I'll try to keep it brief.
Okay.
So the diagnostic is more standards aligned than what we were getting with MAP. So our instruction in classrooms is standards aligned, and that linkage is, I think you'll hear from teachers or others, a more powerful tool then. Also, the instructional component provides personalized pathways for students that, based on where they are with their grade level standards work, what those next learning targets are for them. So it could be, very different student to student, but it's very appropriate for where those students are in their learning.
And they have validity across ethnic groups and racial groups? Is that,
and they have a lot
is that data tested? Were able to see that?
Sure, and if you'd like, Dean, we can share the reports from iReady's rep, who can give you all that data background if you'd like.
I heard a lot of the discussion. I was at many of the meetings, but I didn't really quite hear whether it would deal with racial differentiation that could be addressed more easily.
Well, I would echo what Eric said. There's no perfect assessment, but there are many more built-in accommodations into the iReady platform that you don't see with MAP. And those become normalized then across, so if a student needs like a math problem read to them versus, you know, having to read it, like that accommodation is available for all students, not just maybe a student with an EL need.
So it'll give us a better metric with regard to ethnic race than MAPS did.
It does a better job allowing all students to access the platform successfully.
Okay.
I would say to also on that, Dean, that in my personal experience, the two areas where I think this is a much better assessment are English students or English second language students and students with disabilities. And that goes kind of to the accommodation piece. So.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm pleased with the process used, the year-long pilot program team involving principals and teachers and so on to make this selection. I think it looks to me like it was a thorough process.
Well, thank you for saying that. And I want to make sure I point out, you know, our administrative team, but we also have Kendra Atkinson and Tiffany Haas from Cottage Grove School that took time out to be with us this evening, that were part of that pilot team at Cottage Grove School.
And this only replaces the map, correct? It doesn't replace other, like the Devils or other things that we're using?
Correct. The iReady will be the diagnostic replacement for MAP, and then we will add an instructional component. We've also talked about FastBridge, which Krista could mention that we're looking at in terms of replacement for some other district-based assessments.
Who was the teacher that's here? Dan?
So Tiffany Haas, classroom teacher, and Kendra Atkinson at school site.
Tiffany, as a teacher, do you mind maybe just giving us like a minute or two feedback from a teacher standpoint on the iReady compared to the map, if you're comfortable?
Yeah, that's fine. With the map, basically what I saw was I saw a score, and I didn't see much else about the child. Whereas with iReady, what I was able to do is I saw their test, I got to see a lot of strengths, and I got to also see where do I work on, what do I get to work on next when I pull back in a small group, or if I want to work on this kid one-on-one, or is there another kid in the class that needs something similar so I can pull a small group? And they do, you know, daily, every other day, like 10 or 15 minutes that they can use, and it's personalized instruction basically. And then I can see how they're progressing, and if they need help on something else, then I can keep changing the way I'm teaching, and iReady gave me strategies to use, and so it became less trying to figure out everybody when iReady has that for me. And it also, in our twice a week PLCs, we could talk about anybody else who has something similar too, so it actually helped drive more support from more people and helped with our coaches too.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. Any more discussion?
I'd like to make a motion for our approval of the site license with the Curriculum Associates. The Curriculum Associates is presented.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Thank you all. Okay, we'll go back up to
Superintendent's report.
Yeah, we'll go up to the superintendent's report.
Okay, so just very short, there'll be more to come on this, but I just wanted to share with you, if you might recall when the board at your reorg meeting, we made an adjustment on our meeting schedule because of an opportunity on September 11th, on that Wednesday, for our Dane County Equity Consortium to have an opportunity to invite all board members of all Dane County schools at a learning opportunity. And so I've attached for you just a flyer basically that talks a little bit about what we'll be looking to do that evening. And again, there'll be more details to come as we get closer to the date, but we have the date and time, and so we will be formally inviting our entire board, and then as we get closer to get a commitment as to who might be able to join us. Hopefully all 7 board members are available to join us that evening, and we actually are hosting it here at our site in Monona Grove. So we're hoping for a really large turnout, and we're really excited to share the work that we've been doing this past year, and really about the board's role in partnering with us moving forward. So.
Thank you, Dan. Moving on to board reports. Dane, let's see, so two delegate.
Right, I have two reports to make. I'll just, one's not on here, but it's very quickly. I represented to the Monona Grove Education Foundation, and that's going to be very quick. They're basically spent the whole meeting planning the November celebration, and that sort of thing, from the eats to the program and so forth. So the CISA 2 delegate convention, it might be interesting to some of you who are not familiar with it, but there's, what do we have, 13 CISAs around the state, I believe, something like that. And each CISA is somewhat like a school board. It has a governing board, but the representatives on those governing boards come from a geographic district of school districts. And so when I went to that convention, I was put at the table in my district, and from my district we had to select one member to be on their school board. Okay, and so my district is the Madison Public Schools, Monona, and McFarland. And Madison didn't show up, so it was a McFarland fellow. And I've been on the CISA board of control, and I convinced the McFarland fellow that it would be an excellent experience. And so he was elected. It is a good experience. It's something you could do once.
All right, thank you, Dave. All right, TLE committee, Eric.
Teaching Learning Equity Committee met on June 4th. We finalized a report and recommendations to the board, which you all have. I'd ask that you please review the report and consider the recommendations for further action at another board meeting. But I can, basically the 4 recommendations that we came up with was we wanted the board to support a sustained effort in equity work, combating racism in the Monona Grove School District, make the Teaching, Learning, and Equity Committee a standing committee, make Teaching, Learning, and Equity the main focus of the next district strategic plan with more regular reporting to the board, and continue working to revise or improve district messaging. It also, in some of those, one of the things we touched on is having an equity policy too. So. Yeah.
Peter.
I want to thank the committee for its work. I think the time spent was well worth it in terms of the issues, the raising of the awareness of the issues that you lay out your observations to myself, to the board, and to, I think, the administration. I think that's important work, and we made some, I think we made some important progress just bringing those issues forward. I would ask that we bring for consideration for approval forward for discussion and consideration for approval the recommendations that are in this report at our next board meeting.
Yep, and I'll work with our President McKinney and Eric on agendizing that properly.
I'd just like to say it was a pretty short time that we didn't have a lot of time to work on this. I think we accomplished quite a bit. And like you say, Peter, a lot of it was, I think we did sort of shift our focus of the district to make this a priority. And I think Andrew, when you were on the committee, and Susan Fox, who's not here, and all the board members for supporting the committee. And Dan, thank you for being at the meetings too. And thank you to the community members who were part of it too. So I hope we can continue to work.
This was a huge part in the community, so this is really needed. So we already know where my vote's going next month. Go ahead.
My observation is I know some committee members are frustrated with what seems to be a lack of progress because the committee is mostly gave us observations and the district at the time, didn't, we didn't snap our fingers and reduce the disproportionality. We didn't take its actions. Well, if we knew how to fix these things, we wouldn't be needing a committee for this. And I think just simply discussing and raising these issues is actually a very important step in the progress and some process and something we have to do first.
The only person that could snap their fingers and change things was Thanos. If you saw that. That was about it. Besides that, that's not gonna happen. But we're gonna keep working at it, though. All right, so we're going back to our possible action items. We're going to number 4, 2019-2020 intergovernmental agreement for school and career program with Dane County School Consortium.
Okay, so normally this is on the consent agenda every year. It's a standard, agreement. This consortium has been around for many, many years. It's, basically, for lack of a better term, our school of work, programs. We brought it as a separate agenda item this year, though, because there were significant changes to the agreement. More specifically, creating bylaws. As we looked at the structure, and I sit on, our oversight committee. We've been talking for a number of years, and that was a early observation that I had that, we hired an executive director. The program has been running great. Josh Faschel, by the way, is our executive director. But as far as some of the decision making and processes, there was nothing in writing, and so Josh worked very closely with our oversight committee and legal counsel to create bylaws to make it clear. And one of the things that came up recently is you might recall the lease agreement. They had been having an agreement with the district for space here in our building, and now with the expansion of MG21, they needed to find a new home. Well, them being a consortium, they're not really a separate entity, and to even sign that lease, it represents 16 school districts. So who has the authority to sign that lease and enter and so on? So that's why there's a lot of work done to clarify those roles. So as far as the student programs, which of course are the most important piece, no changes. It's still the same agreement, but the addition to that are the bylaws that will help us on some of those procedural things, and for Josh to do his job effectively as executive director.
Who signed the lease before?
That was a good question. So on behalf of the district, I'm guessing.
Josh signed it.
Did Josh sign it as the executive director? Okay.
Yeah. The problem is, other than that, plus we only offered a 1-year lease, where the new place requires a 3-year lease, which is committing future financial commitments from other school districts, which typically is why boards have to approve contracts, because it's committing financial futures.
One other point I should add, just as a reminder, anytime there's a consortium of school districts that work together, one district serves as the fiscal agent. We are fortunate enough to be that. In other words, that's another thing on Jared's plate. So he's put many, many hours in this project as well to pull this together. So all the money flows through our books as well.
What advantages do we have to have it here?
Well, no longer
besides the lease, I mean.
Yeah. So there isn't. I think we get a small fee for being the fiscal agent. So there's that would be the only advantage of us being in that position. And someone has to do it.
We have the space.
Yeah, we did.
We have a convenient space for it.
Yeah.
I'd move approval of 2019-2020 intergovernmental agreement for school career program for the school career program with Dane County School Consortium as presented.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Just real quickly, and I'll follow up with you, Andrew. I think to do the actual signatures, you may be getting or may have gotten an email already to do an electronic signature on that. So we'll work through that with you. So.
Okay. Item 5, resolution authorizing the adoption of the Wisconsin OPEB Trust and Custody Agreement and appointing the trustee and custodian.
Turn this one right over to Jared.
Sounds great. So what I had written in board docs for background is so the district a number of years ago made a change to our teacher retirement plan, and we created 3 tiers. And before that, the district, when an individual retired from the district then became required to pay out that teacher based on the retirement, and that was paying for health insurance for a number of years, along with a cash amount that only existed for up to 3 years. And that money went directly to the staff member into a special pay plan. But since we were paying for health insurance, we were paying the health insurance provider. So then we made a change to our retirement plan where we have created three tiers. So tier 1 was the retirement plan that was grandfathered in. Tier 2 is we did a step down, and then tier 3 is where it's the new retirement plan of $1,500 per teacher based on the full time. In order to make that successful, we needed to be able to not do it as a pay as we go. When someone finally retired, we needed to be able to put that money into a trust, and so the compounding interest would work in favor of that staff member. In addition to that, they were not vested until originally at 15 years. The board made a change last year to move that to 10 years. So for the first 10 years of that money, it goes into a trust. And so at that time, we had selected Wisconsin OPEB Trust, which was managed by CISA. And there was a number of districts that came into that. And so part of that agreement is that Morgan Stanley was the advisor to that. And so CISA 6, along with a number of school districts that sit on that board, such as a consortium, went out for RFP, interviewed a number of vendors, and selected the new vendors. So that's what this agenda item, along with the next agenda item, both pertain to the same thing, but two different duties. And so the trust and custodial was Morgan Stanley, and now it's moving all to BMO Harris Bank. Nothing is going to change in the concept of how reports are given to us, but what we will see overall, we'll see a 40% reduction in fees that were being charged towards that. So that was a positive.
What does a 40% reduction mean in terms of real money annually?
Well, I don't know off the top of my head because it's all based off of points. And so instead of like, for an individual, it could have been up to $100, depending on what the value of their trust was.
I'd move approval of the resolution authorizing the adoption of the Wisconsin OPEB Trust and Custody Agreement and the appointing the trustee and custodian as presented.
Second.
All right. Move to second. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Number 6, resolution authorizing the adoption of the Wisconsin OPEB Trust Investment Advisory Agreement and appointment of investment manager.
So I'm not going to repeat everything about the teacher retirement plan. However, what this role is that before this was Greystone Consultants, so they were making the decisions on where to invest that funds. And so if you recall back, we went into a moderate, so we were getting interest rates between 4 to 6%. And we're probably going to see a little higher interest rates. And so what's happening right now is they went out for RFP. Greystone is being replaced by PMA, and we have a long-standing relationship with PMA as well. So I think it's a nice change. It's going to be a little bit different. They have 4 models versus the previous Greystone has 3. So we've actually met yesterday to be able to align with what we currently had in Model 3 with Greystone is Model 4 with PMA. But we should be able to see some higher return on investments.
You have 4 models. Does a teacher or the investors make that choices?
So as a district, we choose the model for all the funds that are in the trust, and then after the 10th year, we transfer the interest in the money that was contributed into that teacher's 403B, and then they have full access of how they want to manage the funds at that time.
Do you go to the meetings?
I do go to, not every meeting, but...
How is it generally run responsibly?
It's very responsible. CISA does a great job, as you've been on. And that's what's unique about CISAs across the state, as each of them sort of become an expert in one area, and we all, instead of having 12 different CISAs doing the exact same thing, they've sort of migrated to this. And so this was a great opportunity for us as school districts to have someone lead us through that. And since we don't invest on a daily basis as school business managers, being able to bring consultants on and pool our money so we're getting a better opportunity for our staff.
That was a transition from the pre-Act 10 world to the post-Act 10 world for retirement things. And I remember the 2 Susans and I work with you. Has it worked out pretty well as we thought it might, or were there stumbles along the way, or has it been more beneficial or less beneficial? How well did we do many years ago?
I think it's going well. We've seen a lot of school districts come over to this model. Number of school districts at Act 10 cut off retirement benefits, and now we've seen actually them come to the concept of doing either $1,000, $1,200, $1,500, similar to what we've done. We were one of the first districts in this in Dane County to do also the matching side of things. And so one of the areas that I would like to see is more of our staff participate in 403Bs so we can do the matching side of things. So there's some people that are still leaving some funds on the table, but I do think that it's a nice plan to transition out, especially being able to give.
It's met its expectations.
Yeah. In my opinion, I should say.
So we have some teachers some staff, who have not opted in to the 403B when we have.
So let me clarify so our matching program is for teachers. Right. So we do match up to $1,000 per year for the 403B. So we do still have a number of teachers that do not participate in that. They don't contribute anything to a 403B, which means that they're leaving funds on the table. There is, we are working on a proposal to come forth for our support staff to do support to match that as well.
Is there a possibility that those opt-out programs for new employees rather than
the problem with opt-out is they have to set up the 403B account with one of the vendors. We can't necessarily set it up for them, and then it is an automatic deduction from their paychecks, and we can't automatically deduct unless they sign off. So that's where it becomes a challenge.
Millennials don't opt out; they opt in.
Well, I've just been reading some behavior analysis with accounts. They say, if you have a business, in the employment package, put the documents where they need to, just sign in, and they can choose not to, but just assume that that's going to be. But
did you have some more?
No.
Okay.
I'd make a motion for approval of the resolution authorizing the adoption of the Wisconsin Open Trust Investment Advisory Agreement and appointment of investment manager as presented.
Second.
Move to second. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Number 7, traffic study agreement for engineering services between Monona Grove School District and Traffic Analysis and Design Incorporated.
I'll start. If there's specific questions about the agreement, Jared can jump in there. But pretty straightforward, as Jared put together the executive summary. As part of the site plan development and approval process for the new school with the Village of Cottage Grove, we're required to do a traffic study. The initial proposal was for just over $15,000. Jared and I signed off on that, had the initial study done. Now that it's gone back and been reviewed by the county, they've asked for some additional study. So now with the increased scope, that puts the total cost at just over $31,000 per board policy. Any contract we have over $25,000 requires board approval. Just to be clear, we have already signed this. Our board policy also says that in a manner of emergency where you have to, is it a timeliness that we can have the authority to do that as long as we bring it to the board the next meeting. This had to be done prior to the night because they needed to conduct that traffic study while school is in session, so they could be counting traffic and cars in that area of the school. So, but we still formally are looking for the approval tonight.
Now, if we don't approve of this, would you have to pay for it?
That's a good question. I hope you approve because there always would be some legal counsel to figure out what we do next.
That would be some permitting issues, right? If we don't approve this, if we don't do the traffic study.
Well, we've done it. So we need approval to pay the folks who are doing the study.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
What I'm not understanding is that we did initial and then the county came and.
Right, so we have to.
Correct. The county didn't pay for that.
Those are very good questions. Just like road improvements.
We already did one and it was okay. So then the county came in and that's what I'm hearing. The county came in and said you need to do it.
So the initial one was based off of feedback. So when we met with the Village of Cottage Grove to determine if a traffic study was required. It was obviously because of the location of the school, Bus Road and Cottage Grove Road. They said yes, and so we reached out to them. They told us the specifics that they were looking for. We got some specifics from Dane County, but then based on the numbers that came back, they wanted to expand that to include Violet's Road, Violet's Hope Road, just because of the numbers that they saw. If there would have been different numbers, then we might not have had to do the additional one, but based on the numbers they were seeing, they just want to make sure.
How big an entity do you have to be to have a traffic study done? If I built a house out there, would I have, if I was the only
You as
house?
an individual building one parcel of land, you probably not need a traffic study, but large builders that are coming in and plotting out an entire subdivision, typically
Like
they will
school and bus routes and roads?
Yeah, you mean school, or even like if you were putting in 60 homes, they would ask that you work through.
And a lot of parents are going to bring kids and things like that, okay.
Exactly how big a house are you building?
What? I'm looking for a rest home.
I move approval of the traffic study agreement for engineering services with traffic analysis and design incorporated as presented.
Second.
Moving second. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Okay, number 8, 2019-2020 preliminary budget.
Right over to Jared.
All right, so I'm glad that we're getting to this at 8:30, so you can be here until about 11. No. So I attached it to board docs, and I just want to, before I walk through it, this is our preliminary budget. And so typically you would have saw this the first time at this meeting, and then approve the preliminary budgets at the end of June, because that allows us to start issuing POs since our fiscal year starts on July 1. And as everybody has probably heard me say over and over and over, this is the preliminary budget. We don't have our final numbers until October, which is crazy when you think of developing a budget. You're really 5 months into your budget before you get your final numbers. And so the preliminary budget is based off of what I know as of even yesterday and what happened with joint finance. We know that there's could still be tremendous changes. There could be positive changes. It could be negative. I really believe that what joint finance passed out of the budget is going to be the minimum. If we get extra funds, that would be great. So I'm just going to quickly walk through this. And really, when we walk through our budgeting process, we start back in December and January. We use that zero-based budgeting side of things. There's still a lot of things in motion, not only on the funding side of what we're going to receive in revenues, but on the expenditure side. Obviously, we still have to, we're in the hiring season right now, so just because we have a staff member that leaves, we don't count on that necessarily as a savings to the budget. So you might see a $1,000 increase from someone that comes in. The markets are tough right now. We are competing with a lot of school districts, and as we talk about the number of applicants, they're significantly decreased. And we're talking with Nicole, and even their principals, when they used to see at kindergarten level, first grade level, 300 applications, now they're only seeing 30. I mean, there's a significant shortage of educators across the country, across the state, and specifically here in Dane County. So, we're still working through hiring. We're looking at programming that's coming in, and obviously this does take into account the actions that you guys did approve earlier on, such as the health insurance, looking at iReady, incorporating that into the budget. But there's still a lot of moving parts to it, and so what we put together is buckets of funds. We still have to go through negotiations with our 2 organized employee groups, along with the board approving salaries for the rest of our employee group. So I know that we've laid some of that stuff out in closed session, however, it's not finalized, and as I always tell everybody that we're in the business of educating students. We don't know always what student is going to show up at the door. We welcome everyone, so that might be an increase for our budget by $100,000 because that student has severe autism or needs a one-on-one aid. So we try to plan for that, and as we look through the tail end of open enrollment, and we've accepted those kids. We're waiting for individuals to acknowledge back if they are going to attend or not. So we tried to build in some revenue based off of that from what you approved back in January. And so, like I said, there's a lot of moving parts, and we'll continue to update the board as additional information comes in that we feel pretty strong in, but ultimately the board will have to approve the final budget in October. and then set the levy for our community. I'm not going to walk through the first number of pages. Those are just pretty much basic information. If you go to page 6, this talks about our enrollment projections. This includes what we're projecting coming in with open enrollment along with residential growth. And so as of right now, you can see there is 2018-19 enrollment, so that's as of last year finalized. That number is not going to change. And this is where our projected enrollment is for 2019 and 20. So we are projecting an increase in residents along with just overall students through open enrollments. Moving to page 7, as really school districts are required and pretty much limited in how their funds are raised, which are revenue limits. And so I do put in here a revenue limit projection. One of the things that we're seeing coming out of the Joint Finance Committee is first time in a number of years we're actually seeing an increase in the per pupil spending on the revenue limit. And so when we talk about revenue limits, it's a 5-page long document that we have to put numbers in, and it pretty much calculates the total amount of revenue that you can collect between state equalization aid and property taxes. And it's driven off of enrollment and then the per pupil dollar amount. So if you look at here, there is 4 years of history going back to 2015-16, and then what I'm proposing. So you can see right now the top line where it says revenue limit, that's the maximum revenue limit that will split out between state equalization aid and amount that we pass along to our property tax. So what this takes into account is the 10 FTE residents, and when we add new FTE, we only get to count a third of those. So it takes 3 years for a full-time student to be counted fully for a district. So when we look at a base dollar amount of about $10,500, we only get a third of that when new families move in, and so it takes 3 years before we get the full $10,000. We're looking at a $175 per pupil increase. So when we were doing our original conversations this year, we've always been planning for $200. So we're getting $175 on the revenue limit, and we're going to get an additional $25 under per pupil aid. One of the things that we talked about earlier tonight is the whole us working with McKinstry on 3 phases. You'll notice that during those phases 2 and 3, there were a revenue limit exemption that we were able to take advantage of. So we did a number of projects that we actually planned out for debt, and those debt payments are coming due, but since we participated in the energy efficiency exemption, that money that's due now is becoming an exemption on our revenue limit, so we can increase our revenue limit to pay off the debt. It doesn't give us additional funds to put into the classroom. It's debt that's been set out there in Fund 38. So that's an additional the $1.2 million. Obviously, we have our $2.6 million that was part of the operational referendum. And I know it's sort of hard to believe, but we are looking, the new school isn't online, but we are starting to purchase equipment for that. We're starting to put pilots into place for next year around furniture, around IT. So when the new school comes online, we have selected that as a staff, not just decisions by our consultants. So you see the $930,000 operational referendum on there. And if you recall the whole Walmart reassessment that happened, so this school year we had to spend $118,000 to pay back to the city of Monona because they had to return those funds to Walmart. And so we're able to add that on to our revenue limits the following year. So that's an increase there. We are projecting a 2% increase in equalization aid. Now, equalization aid doesn't give us additional funds. What that does is it just lowers the amount that will be passed on to our property taxpayers. And so that should be at about a $266,000 increase. We'll get our first estimates on July 1. So, and then there was some changes to how state aid for exempt computers and personal property is. And so you'll notice that on the chart here that the first change was last year. And so now it's incorporated into the equalization aid. It's just one of those ways to say that they're giving school districts additional funds, but it comes through as just a shift from one entity to the other. So ultimately, we're looking at about $24,293,000 of revenue limit that we would pass along to our property taxpayers in the districts. Moving on to page 8, we are projecting a 4% increase in our property values. What's the importance of property values in our district? Obviously, it allows us to take whatever, we take that amount that we just talked about on the revenue limit and divide that over our property value, which ultimately gives us our mill rates. But it also comes into play in January when they start calculating our equalization aid. So the more property value we have, and they divide that out by the number of resident students we have, and then that's where they determine if your district has the ability to pay more or less on the whole equalization across the district or across the states. And our district has been classified as a high equalized value district, so they consider our taxpayers or our property owners have the ability to pay more for that. So sometimes you'll see a higher mill rate due to that fact versus to an area where it has low property values and a number of students, so then the state feels that they have to kick in more for them. So when you're looking at everything from Fund 10, which is where our general fund comes out, majority of all of our educational and operational side of things, Fund 38, you're seeing that is an increase of about $935,000, and that's where we would code the McKinstry debt payments from phase 2 and 3 that were done for over the last number of years, and this is debt payments. And then you can see that our referendum debt, Fund 39, is actually decreasing a little bit, and then Fund 80 is staying the same. So we're looking at a total levy of just over $30 million. And then it breaks down to the mill rate. Right now we're looking at a 13.36 mill rates. I do want to, that is still lower than the 2016-17, but as we walk through the referendum and what we were talking to people about, we were talking that it was going to be approximately, I should say, so when we did the borrowing for the $57 million, it was originally 29 cents per $1,000. We were able to have some interest savings to come back to 18 cents, and then the operational side of things was about 46 cents. So if we were to apply that to increase over last year, we would be at a 13.49. So we're actually coming in under what we had communicated through during the referendum side of things. Now that number can change in multiple different aspects. Obviously, if we start getting additional residents that we weren't planning for, if the property valuation comes in much lower or much higher, if we get additional state aid that wasn't increase of that 2%, either more or less, that will change that. So the 13.36 that we're projecting right now is what technically gets passed along to our taxpayers.
That's very clear.
Yeah. Page 9, we'll move on to Fund 10, General Fund Revenues. Right now we are moving forward with a balanced budget. So we do have a projected revenues of $43,492,000. And as you can see below that, explains out where those monies are coming from. The biggest side of things with the local tax levy is that we're seeing at 175. Moving on to the expenditures, as I stated, we have a balanced budget, so we're matching the revenue side of things. It's broken out by object codes, so we have our 100s and 200s, which are our salaries and benefits. Then we move down to 300 purchase services. Our non-capital objects are things that cost less than $3,000, or are those consumable supplies. Things that are over $3,000 or more are the capital objects, then obviously insurance and judgments and debt service transfer. And when we talk about transfers, that's transferring out of Fund 10 over to Fund 27, which we'll talk about next. We do have a small increase in the joint finance recommendation, much smaller than what the governor was asking for, but that does yield about a $60,000 revenue increase for us. But obviously when I talk about Fund 27, you're still seeing an increase to that transfer due to the fact that we do have salaries and benefits over there, so that $60,000 isn't eating up the entire increase of everything else. So like I said, we have expenditures of $43,492. So at this point, Fund 10 is balanced, but as I said, there's a lot of different moving parts that are still happening. And then the last page here is just on one-page summary that shows you the revenues versus the expenditures for both 18-19 budget and the 19-20 projected budgets, and then assumptions that have been made. Obviously, the revenues we've talked about a little bit was the $2.6 million referendum, the $930,000 referendum, the increase of 10 FTE resident students. We're looking at approximately $175 on the revenue limits, and then our per pupil categorical aid is increasing by $25 over last year to a total of $679. And so when you hear districts talk about getting $200 increase, it's by combining that 175 plus the 20, or 175 plus the 25 to get the $200. On the expenditure side, as we heard from the health insurance side of things, on the budgeting side, we're projecting a 0%, even though there is a reduction of approximately $91,000. And the reason that we're saying a 0% is because we don't know what those new staff are going to take. Some might be at single and take family. Some staff that are leaving didn't have health insurance, and the new ones will come in. So for budgeting purposes, we have that at 0% for health insurance and dental insurance. We're looking at a 3% increase for transportation. And that's due to our portion of the field costs, plus we also have to add some routes due to the fact that the number of students that might be transferring from Winnequa up to GDS, along with our walk zones. So kids that were at Taylor Prairie this year, moving over to Palm Beach Grove, they become eligible for busing. So we do plan to add when I say 1.5 buses, it's not that we cut a bus in half, but when we look at funding it, it's about a 1.5 increase. And then obviously implementing the staffing plan that was approved by the Board of Education a couple months ago. So is there any questions about Fund 10? That's the biggest portion of our budget.
You answered them all. I was only going to ask you whether that per pupil categorical aid was an increase or not, but you answered that question already.
Awesome.
I have one question.
Yes.
And I'm sure you're doing this, I just wanted maybe clarification. Because there may be a change if the teacher contract is whatever that may be, less or more, we're adjusting for that because we don't know exactly what that is right now.
Right.
Correct?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. So what I do is I try to anticipate where I think you guys are going to end up being at, and hopefully I've overestimated.
You do a good job of that.
Perfect. And so it's hopefully going to fall within that, and then if there's not, there's obviously areas within, purchase services that I add on for some changes in case, since we haven't finalized.
Taking that into account.
Yes.
Jared, is there a factor in that, in the state budget system for sustainability incentives?
Unfortunately, no. There used to be under the revenue limit, and that's where we talked about the increase of 1.4 million on our revenue limit. But in the last budgets, that was stricken out, so we don't have the ability to go through and upgrade and then add that on as an extra revenue exemption for schools, I should say. I'm sure there's other parts of the state budget that I'm not aware of and other departments that might pertain to sustainability, but in the DPI side of things, they have removed that. All right, moving on to Fund 27, this is our special education, and this is sort of where we were really hoping to see some much relief from the state budget. As we all recall, we were really looking, right now we're at about 25% reimbursement from the previous years. What does that mean? That means that for every dollar that we spend in special education, the state is only reimbursing us approximately 25 cents. So, and these are our students that do have the most need, where we're needing to be able to serve them in different capacities. And so right now the district is transferring out of Fund 10 approximately $4.4 million. Next year we're anticipating that being $4.5 million. It is $60,000 less than what we could have been transferring, so we're appreciative to that. However, it would have been nice to see it at least 30%, and then the following year going to 60%, which would definitely help in the concept of funding special education. And the other areas that we're receiving...
You said it would be 60% in the second year?
It would have been 60%.
Would have been,
the governor's.
okay. That's
Yeah. So we're only going to be at 30% the second year.
And I'd like to just point out that if you're in a private or charter school, the state funds special education at over 90%. But if you're in a public school, it's only 25%.
Yes. Thank you, Ray. So our Fund 27 budget is a $6.8 million. And that is broken down the same way that I broke down Fund 10. So salaries and benefits, purchase services, non-capital objects, capital debt. The one point that I do want to point out is that in special ed, we also do receive 2 federal grants. One is federal flow-through, which is approximately $600,000, And then we have our preschool flow through, which is much less. It's approximately, I think, about $25,000. The one thing that I did not mention in Fund 10 is we did receive a 50% reduction in Title I. So we were receiving over $200,000 in Title I to assist in reading and math. However, that's being reduced for next year to 50%. So we're going to lose $100,000 with that as well.
Is that because we got a reduction in the students allowable for that, or the appropriation was cut, or both?
So there's a combination along with our general population and where our free and reduced lunches are from.
Okay.
So with Fund 27, there can be a fund balance, and so that's the reason that we transfer that 4.5. So you can see that we're only receiving approximately $1.5 million from the states when it comes to aid for special education. Moving on to Fund 38, Fund 39, both of those are debt service. What here is a chart that shows you our outstanding debt. It's been updated with the $57 million referendum that we did pass. You can see at the far right of your page, there's Fund 38 showing you that we have payments this year in the amount of $3.4 million. Part of that is that we will be paying off the $1.6 million loan that we took out for the property on Bus Road, the Knott's property. And that is being funded through the money that we set aside in fund balance from the sale of the Damascus Trail, along with the remaining funds from the TID closeout in Monona that we will have, that you will be passing a resolution for in July, because we just received the funds the other day. Fund 39 is debt that is referendum approved, and you can see that for next year there's a $9 million debt payment that's happening, and that's due to the fact of our new referendum coming on. However, we're not levying the entire $9 million due to the fact of the way that we were able to structure our debts. We've been able to sell that $57 million with that company giving us a $3.6 million premium, so we can apply that to that. So there is absolutely no impact to our taxpayers for the $57 million, and then we'll start with the interest payments for a number of years, and then we'll be picking up the principal payments after that. But that just shows you what our payments will be this fiscal year, which are both set forth by debt service schedules. Moving on to Fund 50, School Nutrition. You can see that we do have a very successful school nutrition program, and part of that is due to the fact that we have staff that's interested in helping our students. That's not only in the school nutrition side of things, but that's our teachers, our educational assistants, our administrators that encourage families to participate. And you can see that we are anticipating a total revenue of $1.3 million. You'll notice that our expenditures are at 1.4. We are upgrading a number of equipment throughout the district. In addition to that, things that I haven't even been able to share with our principals yet, but every elementary school is getting a garden bar, so there will be a wide range of fresh vegetables instead of canned vegetables starting next year, along with moving away from ID cards such as these for our kids to pit pads. And then the high school is doing a redo of their entire food service line. Winnequa was able to get upgrades this year. We are obviously bringing on MG21, so we're updating there. And we do have a very large fund balance in school nutrition. Not that we've chosen to do that as a district for a number of years, or the USDA has set very clear guidelines that they tell us how much we have to raise our food prices by. And so the last couple of years we've been able not to raise those by requesting to be able to use our fund balance, along with being able to move our families that were under the reduced side of the free and reduced to not having to pay as well, and to be able to overspend on that to bring that down. Now, obviously, once we're able to bring that back to a point where it's only 2 months of expenditures, then we'll go back to that. But I think as long as we continue to offer quality food and think of things outside of the box, I think we'll continue to see this program grow. And then moving on to the last fund of tonight is Fund 80, and that's the Community Service Fund. That has a separate tax levy of $385,000. This is where we take our swim lessons, our aquatics program. Actually, this is where we were able to fund our auditorium drapes out of as well. So, and then you can see that this is going to be the third year that we've been able to offer summer camps through our high school athletic department, along with Kevin running some middle school camps during the school year. What's nice about this is it allows us to offer low-cost camps in that $50 to $80 range for families to participate in football, basketball, volleyball, put on by our coaches, instead of having to find to go elsewhere where where they're paying $300 to $400, $500. But it also does help internally buy equipment. So we're buying basketballs for summer camp, which then indirectly can be used in the bio classroom, on the basketball court. So those are some great things that we're able to do. But obviously, it's open to everybody in our community. It's not just residents of the district that are attending our school district. We also have been able to put our custodial salaries and benefits that are associated with community use for that. So, and I've listed the bullet points down below.
That was a virtuoso performance.
Well, thank you, Dean. I really appreciate it.
I don't know, Peter.
Fund 80, so explain, you are showing a $100,000 deficit.
Yep. So that's the same concept as Fund 50. We've had a pretty, I don't want to call it the word lucrative, we have a very high fund balance. And so based on expenditures that are going in there, I'm making the decision that we should use our fund balance before raising the levy.
So you're spending down the fund balance by unbalancing the budget for the year.
Yep. And then once we get to a balance where I always think that you should be at 2 months of expenditures, and then we need to go back to that normal expenditure side of things. And so at that time, then obviously we either have to increase community service fees, which would be swim lesson fees, summer camp fees, or increase the tax levy.
Any further discussion?
Is that the correct term, unbalanced? Is that the correct term that you use?
Yeah. Unbalanced.
It's great to see that the school nutrition program is doing so well. We're running that internally. And when did we start doing that? When did we take it back from Chartwell's?
So I started in July 2010, so we brought it back in July 2011.
Okay. And doing great. We're talking about renewables. One of the things that they say that the average American can do to reduce greenhouse gases, the biggest thing they can do is change your eating habits. So it might be something to look at in terms of what we're serving in the cafeteria. Might be interesting to some students to work on that, and that's a way of reducing footprints.
Okay. Anyone like to make the motion to approve the 2019-2020 preliminary budget as presented?
So moved.
Second.
Been moved to second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed?
Sorry. All right. So you heard what you hear is all that matters.
All right. Motion carries.
Whoever opposes it has to make another presentation.
All right. Moving on to item 9, the 2019-2020 board committees.
If I may.
Yes, sir.
This is a little out of order because we're going to talk about sustainability issues later, but since we have this board committees, we're on the board committees, I want to raise this subject. I've been looking at this issue of renewable energy and talking to folks, and one of the things that I have noted is, particularly when you're talking about different ways of funding options, the complexity, all the different moving parts, all the different people who may be involved, all the different ways of doing it. There's co-ops where you sell the investment tax credits. There's community co-ops. There is Renewable Energy. Middleton Cross Plains is doing renewable energy rider deal with MG&E. We are on the border between Alliant and MG&E out where the new school is. We have community interest, and there are just a lot of parts that is difficult to get your head around, and particularly on the funding side. I think that there are plenty of people we have involved with the UA and Findorf and McKinstry who can tell us what to do and how, with the, how to spend the money. But I think putting together a program, it is a complicated issue. And the other thing that I've been impressed with is the people in the community and the people in Dane County who are committed to this and are willing to help us out. The talent that I've seen out there, and the knowledge and the information. And I would like to propose the creation of a sustainability committee with two objectives for the coming year. And the first one is to review and recommend to the board issues regarding, to make recommendations on policy. In particular, Madison just passed a 100% renewable energy proposal resolution where they want to get there by 2030 or 2040 or something. I forget what the number is. Doesn't matter. What matters is, do we want to consider something like that? And the other thing that this group would do is pull on this talent from the community, have community members, and work together to make recommendations to the board and to the school district about some steps that we could take related to renewable energy and sustainability. In particular, my impression is, my thought is that we want to go big, both as a statement to our students and our commitment to the future, and because I believe that this is a way to an important way to reduce operational costs and save money. And I would like to know if there's support from the members of this board that we could propose this, and if there is, I'll put some language together and bring it back for the next meeting.
I would support a committee on sustainable renewable resources and energy as an ad hoc committee. I think that it's important, it's cost saving in the district community, and there's clearly been enough, 14 tonight, plus additional emails we've had from the community and public, that it's an area of interest and concern for the district, so I would support that.
Yeah, I'll support an ad hoc committee for that too as well. Dean?
I do as well. I think you suggested that it be a joint board community member committee.
Yeah, I would. I mean, I think we have some people who are A, very knowledgeable in the committee, and B, very committed. And I think bringing them and their expertise on board, particularly people who would like to drive this. And I would actually reach out, in addition to staff and students of the district, to see if we can get some involvement in there. I mean, West High School saw a student-driven led effort that it really enhanced what they did out there, which it drove what they did out there. And I think that there's some young people who would be very interested in participating too.
We've already had that shown too.
Yeah, and so I would say it would be.
And you envision this as something across the school district and not just the new school?
Absolutely. Absolutely across the school district, because I believe that if we're going to do anything, we need to do it in both of our communities, give both of our communities the opportunity to participate and be part of it, and feel the part of it. So across the district, and we are right now looking at not just a new school. We're looking at projects across the district. We were approached several years ago, by the city of Monona, asking if they could use space on Winnequa to put up solar panels, for example. And at the time, we didn't reach an agreement with them, but I think that there's interest in working with our municipalities and our communities. So I think this could be a big thing, and it could be important to the district. But it's complicated, and I would like to use some of the resources that we found. Okay. That makes sense? All right. I'll draft some language unless anybody else wants to draft some, I volunteer to draft some language for our next board meeting.
Why don't you draft it? I'll critique it.
It's a deal.
And I would just like to say regarding teaching learning equity, one of the recommendations in the report is to make the teaching learning equity committee a standing committee. So I would just ask that we consider that for future action on the board meeting too as well.
Okay. And also, should discuss about the committee that we have that I have been thinking about. It's time we could go ahead and let it go to community engagement. We could discuss that probably in a later week, but that'd be something that I would like to discuss to go ahead and dissolve because it has served its purpose, in my opinion. If anyone else.
I didn't hear what you said.
The community engagement committee, I would like to probably, in my opinion, it has served its purpose, and I'd like to dissolve that committee. But that'd be something we can discuss as well.
I'm not 100% in agreement that it's served its purpose, but I do understand that we do have, we have limited bandwidth and limited support for this year, but may not have to be. We may not have to do anything with it this year, which is fine. But I'm not sure I'm ready to kill it on a permanent basis or ongoing basis, because I think that we should be able to look at this in next year and future years and say, if there's a pressing need for a particular area, then we can pick that up and start again. But it's just my thought, and we can
discuss some more.
Okay.
All right. On that one, so we don't have to make no motion on that.
Nope.
Okay. Let's move on to discussion items. Facilities planning update.
Yep. So we on May 29th had board workshop, and so since that time you just have the written update of what has happened in the last week and a half, and so I don't think there's anything too substantial that hasn't been previously discussed. But if there's any of those items you'd like to have questions or comment on, we can do that. The one thing that you may not have seen before we put as an attachment is the approval timeline for the site plan with the Village of Cottage Grove. On there were two options. We're going with the second option for the potential approval in July. So you see in the pinkish color that second the July. Excuse me. With the July approval. So we'll be looking at submitting that preliminary site plan that you reviewed at the last workshop in the next 2 weeks, and to the Plan Commission, and then subject to their approval, we'll move on to the Village Board. So that's something that some of the issues that have arisen from that will certainly have continued discussion and an update specifically on that next month.
Was the Plan Commission meeting tonight?
Yeah, they're having it right now.
I have a question on this.
There is, but we have nothing submitted this evening.
Right, but they're...
So we're going to have to work through that. They meet on the second Wednesday, the same night that we do.
A question I have, Jared, I don't know if you or Dan, if McKinstry is going to be working with us on the energy issues and so forth and sustainability, what's their relationship with the construction people, or they're kind of a owner's reps in part, I think, and also the sustainability issue, which should be getting an energy type of thing should be getting integrated all along the way. Is that my understanding?
Yes. So what McKinsey
so they're on board immediately.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Any more discussion on it?
We're still on facilities planning, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry.
That's all right.
Any more discussion?
No, I think this is all.
Okay.
We had our update a couple weeks ago, yeah.
All right, moving on to sustainability solutions for district facilities.
Well, that's something we've heard a lot about tonight.
From the little ones to the older ones.
Haven't we talked, I think we've talked about that one, haven't we?
I mean, if we would like to do it again, I mean, I got time.
Half the speakers have left though.
I look at what other districts have done. Oregon is putting in a net zero school. The Middleton Cross Plains is working with MG&E, is getting a megawatt of solar. Out of MG&E, it's installing 5 megawatts in Middleton area, and a megawatt of that's going to the schools. I think that there's a lot of good examples of ways to go for us to go pretty big, and not only that, but our site and our the space we have and some other things add up, and the geothermal, for example, add up for some pretty good things we can take advantage of at the current site. I'd also like to think about, and perhaps it's a little bit premature, but I'd also like to think about expanding this out to our other buildings. When we started with McKinstry 10 years ago, working with McKinstry, the solar just wasn't there in terms of the cost-benefit analysis. Now I think if we started from scratch, it might be the first thing we do, because it would have the highest cost-benefit analysis, shortest return on investment of anything that we could do.
Peter,
Yeah.
quick question to Peter. You were one of the principal people on the development of GDS and whatever energy stuff they had there, right?
Not exactly.
Well, but if
I was on the board.
If I recall, whatever we did there, that you had a lot to do. At what time in the game was that essential in your judgment? I hear other people have their own opinion.
Well, we're going to start construction in next summer. Is that the schedule for the new building?
Yeah.
This next spring?
Well, it has to have a design factor too, doesn't it?
That's right. So I would like to see us have recommendations for new construction, what we would be doing there by the end of this calendar year, so that we can plan it into and that might be moving a little fast, but at the very least to have some idea, so that we can integrate plans with that, and that might be aggressive, but at least have a plan in place by that time, and then take on the other things around the district as they come up. Those would be on existing and at or near our existing facilities. So the timing is less crucial, because you're going to be retrofitting things anyway. We just need to make sure that we line this up with other renovations that we may or may not be doing if we decide to go there. I think, for example, my personal thought, just throwing this out there, I think a community cooperative, like they've similar to what they did at East, would work really well on Cottage Grove and Winnequa elementary schools. Would work very well there in those communities. Those are existing buildings. We're doing some modest renovations on those, and it would be good to plan with the timing of those renovations.
All right. Future meeting dates. We have a special board meeting next week at 6 o'clock. And then the following Wednesday, we have a school board workshop with the Alma report and the strategic.
And actually, we didn't update that. It's just Alma report only.
Okay.
Yeah.
When's the Alma?
On June 26th.
Is there any chance we could do that on a different night? Well, it involves Alma. I know we've had it on the calendar for a while. It involves Alma. Okay, fine.
Yeah. Then the next couple of school board meetings, regular ones, July 10th and August 14th.
is there one on the Tuesday in September, Dan?
Yeah, that was to accommodate the Dane County Equity
Okay.
on the 11th, right?
Okay.
All right. I have a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and second. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carried.
Right. Thank you very much.